Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is open for public attendance in person. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. If you have submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic, and at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak, as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the MGA Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
Yeah, the 9 o'clock appointment from Redland resident. Redland would like a councillor to speak on the subject, so I'll be the presentator on that.
Okay.
At 9 o'clock.
Okay. Any other additions or changes?
I'll move the agenda as amended.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We had the minutes from the April 19th council meeting. Any errors or omissions? If not,
Move the minutes as presented.
Deputy Reeve Klassen has moved to approve the minutes. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to our 9 a.m. appointment.
I believe one of the additions or Shanna puts in an email yesterday, had the Redland documents, the map, and the estimation. It's in the emails that you got yesterday, which you should have seen. I'd like to start out with just a short history of the WRC and the water system especially for the new councillors. It started out with Rocky Ford's water treatment was the oldest plant in the area and the most urgent community to have a new upgraded or new plant. It was also the municipality that had the longest history of searching out for alternatives. They been working on this for a long time. So in phase 1, I'll just add to the history and the alternative. We got together as a group, the different municipalities, and we determined that since Rocky Ford had the longest history, that they would be the lead on the project because they were most urgent with water. So we got water, we got phase 1 approved. Galician receives the first pipe from the standard, thereby fixing their 20+ years of very poor water. Rocky Ford, on all accounts, including the ministry, should have been first. But Rocky Ford gave up their position because of Galician's poor water quality. So that's why Galician got it first, because it was deemed they had the worst tasting water. It was still safe, but nobody could drink it. So the Rocky Ford had good tasting water, but it was the oldest plant, and Alberta Environment had concerns. But since they were fixing new, they kept renewing their license. So in phase 2, a new raw water reservoir was added to the standard plant. WID upgrades and canal was a joint venture. So when we dug the reservoir, they used some of the backfill to fill their ditches and make the ditch the way you see WID fixing ditches now. They lined it, and it was a joint venture. We shared dirt and everything, so it worked out good. In addition to the standard water treatment plant, so they basically doubled the size. They doubled the clear water and made it a big plant. A line to Rocky Ford was installed. Now this phase was funded in part by the federal government. Before it was funded by 90-cent dollars from Alberta, 10% from the municipalities. With third, and third basically worked out about 8 or less cents per dollar the county contributed. So the feds contributed, province contributed their share, and then we're just short a little bit. So we got a really good deal there. Okay. Feds also granted $500,000, which was matched by Wheatland County for a rural water reservoir, and it's just south of the standard school. You can go there if you get a card, tap it, and take the water out of the reservoir for home use, fire use. Some people use it for spraying, especially this time of year. And however, that I got in a little note here, it took 3 years to install that cement structure that was up at the standard. Due to planning matters, they had a hard time getting the planning all done up to snuff. So phase 3 come, and water line was installed to Rosebud. And after consulting with the minister, it was determined that the route the line should take would go through Redland. This route cost an extra $60,000 from the ministry for the extra pipe and distance. So now this land does run right through the hamlet of Redland. In phase 4, water to Azar is not needed at this time, so I think Alberta Environment has closed the project off. Originally Azar was part of it, so they've kind of partially closed the books until such a time as Azar might need it. This regional line and water plant is valued at about $50 million. Standard gave up its water plant, reservoirs, and land to the project. Rocky Ford managed the planning, construction through Baja with an office space and financial oversight, and the county provided a little over $4 million. These funds were part of the reserve for the Galician water. It should have been $5 million because of the federal input of money. I don't know what the exact thing was, 8 something, I don't know. We're still working on the budget. The Alberta Environment Regional Director and overseer of the project, Keith Schenner, said this project was the best planned project that he had the pleasure to work with. He also said that we should be proud of the partnership that was formed and of the construction team that built the project, which was ahead of schedule and under budget. So much so that Keith recommended WRC to a neighboring municipality to build their water system plant. So that was quite a compliment. Alberta Environment is proud of this project. The ratepayers are proud of this project. The county should be proud of this project, and I am certainly very proud of this partnership. The residents of Redland are asking Wheatland County to grant WRC $75,000 as part of the package yesterday. As previously stated, Wheatland County has granted WRC approximately $4 million in the past. WRC is experienced in putting in lines and maintaining them. WRC would own this line and maintain it. This is a one-time grant so the residents of Redland can enjoy water. Currently, Redland and area residents have experienced their wells going dry, and there has been deeper wells dug in the area with poor water and supply problems. Their area residents, not in the hamlet, have plans of also hooking up to this water line. These new water users and more are needed by WRC to help hold steady or even lower the water rates. All these new hookups, who are all residents of Wheatland County, will be paying $5.13 a cubic meter to WRC, not the county rate of $2.22 a cubic meter. In granting this money to WRC, the county would be eligible for preferred shares in the company, and the county is part owner of WRC. At this time, they own approximately a quarter of the company. If Hazar backs out, the county will own a third of it. It's like any other company you have, right? Well, there was another little bit of a page here I wanted to. Got some papers here. It's page 5. Last year, Gleason used 33,094.5 cubic meters of water. Rosebud uses 7,636 cubic meters of water. This is off the same line that runs through Redland and Rocky Ford. If that usage contains the same this year, the county will receive $90,421.71, which is our current rate of $2.22 per cubic meter times the water used by Gleason and Rosebud. The county will have to pay WRC $208,947.46. The county will also have a bill for labor for Rosebud for $13,808 and Gleason $23,366 for a total of $246,194 while receiving $90,421, leaving a deficit of $155,772.60. This is a yearly deficit the county pays for. On a yearly basis, Wheatland County is replacing and upgrading systems in our hamlets, all the hamlets that have water. Again, no need to upgrade or maintain the system in Redland, as this will be done by WRC. So the way I look at it is, this line is part of the water system. The minister granted $60,000 to get it there. So the county share, they're asking for $75,000 to be granted to WRC. The county has granted WRC money in the past, and WRC has put in the lines and put up a world-class water treatment plant. So this is just, so you see in the picture with the water line they want to put in, it would service any lot that would be built in Redland. The main line goes down on that road on the right. The blue is new, but the main line runs right down the road onto the side on the right. So the houses on the right and the houses that are there on that lots can be serviced And around the corner, those houses can all be serviced, and the line going up, they can all be serviced from this line. And the quote here from Jason Nibbs to WRC is just short of $75,000 plus GST for a total $78,596.70. I'm thinking Jason Nibbs is fairly confident he can do it for that because he put it down on paper. I know we've talked about this. We've talked about this for 3 years. These residents, their wells are dry. Residents in the area can't get water. They're living, the Rosebud to eventually get water for their wells had to go up in the hills about a mile or so away from Rosebud, which would be a mile or more, probably 3 miles for the hamlet. That's the closest M&M drilling could find good water. So there's no water in the valley except this pipeline. WRC doesn't have the money to put in the pipeline, but the government has granted $60,000 to get the main line there. All they're asking for is the $75,000 to finish it off. When it's done, WRC will oversee the hookups, and they'll be in charge of how the hookups are done. If they want vaults, if they can put them straight into their house, that's WRC's business and the homeowner's business. No different than in Carsland. Somebody wants to hook up there, they have to get a hold of the county, and they pay for all costs from the curb stop into their house and water meters and stuff. So we're not treating anybody any different here. We just need to get that infrastructure in. Any questions? A few of the residents are here today, so, and I see Jason's here too, so if there's any questions.
Any questions?
Just want to, has this been run through administration, like working with our staff to make sure this is what will work?
Through the chair, the first time we got this updated quote was on Friday. We did have an old quote that we received maybe a year ago. So we haven't worked, and this came from a resident, we haven't worked with the WRC at all on this. We haven't been contacted by them. So yeah, we haven't really had a chance to review this one. We did review it in 2020 when we had our engineers work on it as well. Kind of the difference between our quote from the engineer and the quote from this vendor is that the one from MPE was a little bit more comprehensive. I think there was like 13 residents that were going to be hooked up instead of the 7 on the current map. Also with that other quote, there was a big difference. It was $330,000 compared to $95,000. Now this quote is down to $75,000. With the one that was $330,000, it was kind of like a turnkey quote where they had vaults installed at every property line. So basically a resident could turn their tap on and water would kind of flow into the property. So what this quote is missing is kind of that other element that Councillor Kester was mentioning, the kind of the turnkey factor where the WRC and the ratepayer would work together, which is fine. And by no mistake, this is the WRC system as well, the water line. The WRC has policies that any municipality or contractor to hook into the WRC must be pre-approved by the WRC, and the WRC must work in conjunction with either the municipality or the contractor. So there are quite a few steps that need to be done as well. And probably the other thing from administrations then that we need to still work on is that funding agreement, or how to source these funds. There are multiple ways that it can be done. One is through a community levy tax. That's definitely one method to do it. Another method is the county could stroke a check and do it all themselves. You'd have to consider, is that equitable to everyone, like in the county as well? It's just lots of factors to kind of consider. Administration hasn't done a lot of work on this one yet. It's definitely kind of in our back burner. We did some engagement. It didn't go so well. We've kind of revisited a little bit, but not to the extent of actually getting money to a vendor and getting pipes into the ground at this point. But that's just administration's end. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe that $300,000 engineering study had a 2-inch main line in it. And this here still has the 2-inch main line. So it's just as much water, but the 300,000 had faults and everything. This doesn't have it. This is just the bare line done, and the residents will look after the rest. So I don't know what it would cost to hook up a resident. I'm guessing around $10,000 about. Yeah. It depends on WRC policies, if they have to put a vault in or not. I think they kind of waived that for this project, but we'll wait and see till it's in. What Brian was talking was like a sharing cost, but this is, the share for this one is the residents doing their own hookups. They don't want any money from the county for that. This is just put in the bare infrastructure down the street. And like I said, the government has already put in the 60,000. We've shared everything else. So if there's no questions, I'm prepared to put a motion on the table that we grant $75,000 to WRC to oversee this project and get it done. According to the vendor or contractor, they can get it started in June, and hopefully these people get water before their wells run dry. There's been no moisture this year. They have water during the winter, but as soon as summer comes, the trees and the plants, they suck it all up, and their wells will be dry, if not some going now. And they certainly don't waste water there. I'll put that motion on the floor that we grant them.
Just a question. Has this job been tendered out? Like, is there been any due diligence on the actual cost? What happens if this cost runs to $95,000 or $150,000? Have we got 3 quotes on here that tells us that we're in the ballpark that this can be done for this price?
That's a WRC's thing. Right now, there's a quote here for $75,000 going to WRC. If WRC wants to tender out and see if they can get it cheaper, maybe the county don't need to spend the $75,000. But this contractor does most of the work for WRC, and have found him to be very reliable. He's done a lot of work hooking up water lines.
So that was part of my question too, is if there is a cost overrun, is WRC going to take that?
I can't
we
answer.
pay the 75%, or the 75,000, and then that's all we contribute to it if there's a cost overrun. Because I worry about that if it gets to be more. We don't have any. We're just giving them the money, right?
The same as the whole project was built. You just
Yeah.
give them the money and they built it. I'm not on the WRC
Yeah.
more, Donna,
So if we could have an agreement that we contribute 75,000 to this project, but
you're in charge of how much you give them. They're not asking for cost overruns. You're in charge. The county is. You don't have to give them more money if it's an overrun, right? You said, quote,
yeah, I would want to see
that's
that.
what we
for
get.
sure.
And that's their ask. If there's a cost overrun, they would, and they want the county to pay for it, they'd have to come back and ask for it again. Like the county can't pay more until there's another motion and another discussion. I think that would be the appropriate avenue to take.
Yeah, I just would be worried that if we're not, looking for like WRC's in charge of hiring, so they could just hire whoever. But if it ends up being 150,000, that's double of what we've okayed, right? Because if it doesn't get done, someone has to pay for the finishing it.
They have a quote here for $75,000. I they can be held to the 75,000 unless they hit whatever's down there, a huge boulder or something. They need, I can't see it, why it would be more. They're just going to tunnel. They've tunneled from Galician to Rocky Ford to Rosebud, and we're under budget for the whole thing. That is a lot of pipe they put in. They're experienced at it. The contractor is experienced at it. This is just, it's a smaller job for sure. I don't have any doubts or fears unless something extraordinary comes up, but I can't see it.
I have two questions. Do we have documentation that the ministry directed the water line to go through Redland? My recollection was that WRC, and please correct me if I'm remembering wrong, had deemed that routing was the most cost effective. I thought that had been reported to council, but I don't have details on that. I would like to see the documentation from the ministry with that direction to go through Redland. I think that would be helpful. And then as well, is there a motion from WRC requesting this funding to WRC? I'm very uncomfortable with how it's being framed to council right now. There's currently a single quote that's being provided to council, while the resident letters say that this falls within the Wheatland County procurement policy. From my reading of it, it doesn't, because we would require, I don't know if GST is included in the total or not. It need administration to advise on that. But either way, we're, as Councillor Eichert mentioned, either in the 3 written quotes, or if GST, I mean, depending on what we would estimate the cost for the job to be, could actually require an RFP for over $75,000. I guess I'm trying to sort out process. Is there a WRC motion requesting this? The WRC board members, can you speak to that?
This is the first I've seen this. Last time this, in my recollection, the last time this was brought up, Redlands was brought up, WRC was going to put a number together for the whole package and then come back to the county to see to get a loan, much like we do with the Reservoir seed cleaning plant. But that's the last I've heard of it. But I've been off the board for 6 months, so.
Yeah, I could speak a little bit to it, though. We have talked about it off and on at WRC, there's no doubt. And I first want to say to the residents, we definitely, I want to be able to help and get water to Redland. There's no opposition here in any way, shape, or form. It is more of, we need to do it right. We need to make sure the infrastructure is in good condition, and our staff have reviewed it and made sure that it is something that's going to be there in place and operational for many years to come. That's first off. How we get to that point is we'll get there. It takes time. As far as WRC goes, we've talked about this on and off. This particular request, has not come through the board. I can say that. There has been, the last talk was talk about looping the lines around for some reason. Glenn, you brought that up. And there was look at that. So I want to support this, to be honest, but I think we need to do it the proper way. We need to make sure administration and our staff have reviewed it and made sure that we've got everything we need, because the infrastructure is WRC's, but it's also ours, because it'd be a unique situation where all our other hamlets, the infrastructure is in place. It's our infrastructure as County Wheatland, and we may or may not contract WRC to look after it. We need to find out how we get to that point. And then I look at this as a new service to an area that never had it before. All the other hamlets have paid for water and sewer through the sales of their lots, through their taxes and things. Debentures. And I think we had a discussion before about power when it came into this area. Everybody paid for the power poles to get to their service. So it is water is a service that is offered. It's a new service to the area. And I think this council has to decide, do we fund that 100%? Do we offset debenture it? How do we get there? I think those questions need to be answered first so the residents know exactly what's coming and how we're going to get there. So like I said, I want to make sure we can get water to the area. I want to do it, and I want to do it right.
Yeah, I agree with Scott. I'd like to see water there too, actually. My question is, does it go like a WRC puts in a development permit and our engineers look at it? I guess I'm asking staff.
No development permit required. We just have to provide
okay.
right-of-way access, which is not a problem on our end.
So our engineers don't really look at it at all? To see if it would...
We would. And
okay.
and doing that just for administration's due diligence.
Okay. I don't know how to actually, because it's true, like we've paid at Carsland debentures. We're still paying on debentures. So whether WRC owns it or I guess we own it, either way, we should try to get some kind of water out there.
Councillor Kester?
This water system was built by the county granting the money, and WRC did it. County didn't supply engineering. They didn't do anything, really. They just supplied the money, and WRC put the lines in. I'm just saying, I mentioned how much the county is granting for Rosebud and Galician, the $150,000, I think it was. We also have to consider in Carsland how much we're granting there. Muirfield is paying full price for their water. So I'm guessing $200 and $250 a year we're paying to subsidize them. Redland, you put the line in, there's no more subsidizing. They're paying the full price, and that would be their contribution. They would not require a yearly subsidization. They would pay the full price, same as all the other hookups on WRC. This has been carrying on for 3 years. Their wells are dry. They desperately need water. And look at it outside. If you want to modify the grant and say it's conditional on WRC accepting it, I'm fine with that. Next WRC meeting, they can have a meeting and say, yeah, we'll take full responsibility. We'll take the $75,000 and we'll make sure the line gets put in. And they'll hire whoever they need to hire to get it done. There is a quote for $75,000. If they go over it,
and don't get me wrong, the engineering would be like to make sure that, okay, because this one line looks like it's right, there isn't really a road allowance. Like just making sure that everything aligns so it doesn't interrupt.
there's road allowances for the whole thing. It's just the roads are built maybe a little off.
I just wanted to make sure that, like,
Yeah.
if someone looks at this to make sure
There
that
are
it's not going to
actual.
be ripped up, you know, and
Yeah, I know. There are
And so-
actual road allowances in the hamlet, but that's just where the road is. These would be put right down the side of the road, I'm sure, in a road allowance. But again, it's WRC's responsibility.
yeah.
They would have to come to the county and ask for permission to put a line in. They've put all these other lines in county road allowances. Outside of a couple little issues with manholes being a little close, there's been no issues. So if you want, I would modify or amend my motion pending WRC's acceptance of the responsibility of putting in this line. And they would, like I said, there's no more asking for subsidies. They're paying full value for it's in another way like paying a debenture. if Carsland and Rosebud and Gleason paid the full shot every year, those debentures would go away real fast. So the county is really helping them out. No different than we replace a bridge on a road with only 5 trucks go on it. Who pays for that? Everybody pays for that. We pave a dust control here for 15 houses. Who pays for that? Everybody pays for it, even ones at dusty roads. It's the way the county works.
What is this plan, does it have a fire hydrant in it?
You can't have fire hydrants on that line. Only way you can have fire hydrants is you have to have a reservoir, and it has to have pumps on it capable of the volume. So no, these lines don't have that kind of capacity. And they were designed that way. They were designed to flow into reservoirs. So each of these houses have to have a reservoir put in their house and another pump put on it so they can have water run in their house. They don't get to hook onto the line. The line comes to the house and stops, and then it just, what is it, a quarter gallon a minute or something for
Yeah,
so
cistern
unlimited.
system is what, yeah.
It's a cistern.
Okay. Oh.
And they all have to put in a
In every
cistern.
house?
Yeah, in every house. Have to have a cistern pump to run their own house. This is just, that's why you can only have a 2-inch line. If you wanted a pressure line, you'd probably need, and they don't have that kind of capacity. The Rocky Ford's the same, and Rosebud, but they have their own big clear wells.
So for me, I'll reiterate what Deputy Reeve Clausen and Councillor Biggers said. I have no issue and would absolutely support getting water to Redland if it's feasible. To me, I am having an issue with the process. To me, I would be comfortable with one of two things happening. Either this project going through Wheatland County under our procurement policy, or a proposal coming forward in writing from WRC outlining like a specific process with details around costing, who's responsible for which elements. I'll fully disclose I have some concerns just because of some historical challenges that we've had with governance and costs that have been accrued by under Wheatland Regional Corporation's governance that have ultimately arrived here for proposals to pay. And at the end of the day, it is our ratepayers one way or another who, a subsection of our ratepayers one way or another, who end up paying, whether it's through the water rate or through taxes that are subsidizing. I continue to have concerns around the water rate and some efficiencies and just some governance concerns. But to me, I'm very unclear. This is a request to provide money to WRC, but WRC is not requesting the money from what I understand. At the end of the day, I feel I have a responsibility, governance responsibility to steward these tax dollars either under our procurement policy or if it's falling under another organization's procurement policy, but I would need to see that from that organization taking responsibility for that. It's in no way a reflection of concern for the residents in Redland and their water needs. I know all across Alberta there's residents struggling with access to water and residents that have had to haul water, including in hamlets. And just for clarity too, we do have some hamlets, I haven't sorted how many, but many of our hamlets do their own utility servicing, their own water and their own septic. Some hamlets larger than Redland that do that on an individual basis. I recognize the challenges with the wells there and with the water so proximal. I am confident that there's a solution, but we have to do it in a way that we can ensure that we have done our due diligence as a council. So I will not be supporting the motion, but it's not that I don't support providing water to Redland. It's that it's the process We also just finished our capital budget and our operating budgets, and I think it would have been preferable to have this be included as a proposal in our budgeting process from WRC. But I also recognize the timeliness of going into, we could be potentially going into another really dry season. So I'm very sympathetic to the residents, and I hope that we can find a solution. But from my perspective, I feel like I have a responsibility to ensure that the process is done to either meet our standards, or if WRC is assuming responsibility for it and the proposal is coming from WRC, then I would consider that. Councillor Kester.
I know there's a lot of hamlets struggling for water, but name me one hamlet that's struggling for water and they have a pipeline run right through town for 3 years and they can't access that pipe because we're waiting for it to do it right. Come on now.
Councillor Kester, with all due respect, our
I'm sorry,
administration.
I got the floor. I put that together and I changed my motion contingent on WRC's asking. I don't want to lose the significance of this. WRC got 2 board members here. They can take it to the next meeting. They can talk about it. They can say the county is willing to put in $75,000 if it matches your criteria and you think you can do it for that. Is that acceptable to the board members? I know there's a process, but we're running out of time. Are we going to make it 4 years for no water? The water line is running right there. It's like standing in a river, but you can't take a pail out of it. You have to haul it from Drumheller. Okay.
I hear what you're saying, Glenn. I totally get it. So I just want council to be aware. So this grant, if it's called, we'll call it a grant, will cover just the main going down the street. The residents still have to pay for a hookup, and that still has to be. We've done some work at WRC to figure out how to get them hooking up for water. Council has to decide if that's what they want, is a grant for that. There hasn't been a specific request from WRC for this particular ask. I would, again, I back up the Reeves saying it would be nice to have that and have that discussion. I understand why you're pushing. I understand you have people there as well. I have other people in my division that would love to have access to water and have a water line, but they have no way of getting it.
This line is right there.
I understand.
You can touch it.
So, I'm comfortable that WRC would run the system in the future. I think that's the most efficient way in that area to make sure that these people have water and that infrastructure would be there and it would be owned by WRC. So we have to figure out if we want to do the grant, and if we do a grant, is it a recoverable grant or is it just a give the money, get the project
What do you mean recoverable?
if we want to do some way of debenturing it or anything like that.
Oh, I see.
But I mean, you do have a motion on the floor, and I don't want to step on that. So, I want to get it done, Glenn. I just want to make sure that we do it as best we can.
I'll withdraw my motion if this council agrees to put this on a priority for these residents to get water. There is other avenues that they've been quiet. They don't broadcast it anywhere. What do they got left to do? Wait another year for us to do it right? I want a commitment. And we can debate it all we want. We can talk about it. Sounds like to me, first, board members go to WRC, talk to them, get a commitment from them, get a motion from them, get a letter from them to the next council meeting here, and we can continue this debate. And if it's a recoverable grant, I believe they would be charged county water rates. So one way or the other, they are paying for it. If they're paying the high rates, I don't think it's fair to have a recoverable rate on them, to pay the high rates. But I'll withdraw my motion on the condition that the board members take this up with the board and bring back a letter to next council meeting.
I was just, maybe it's a moot point now, but I was just curious, why has this taken so long? Why hasn't WRC been advocating for this? I'm just curious what the process, how did we get to here?
The WRC doesn't have any money for construction. All their money they've gotten from constructions come from the Alberta government and the county. And the county's given, like I said, a little around the 8-cent mark, I heard at one time. That's the money they've used. They don't have any money to do this construction.
So, but why haven't they brought it to council, I guess, before this?
I don't know. They've been keep talking about it for 4 years.
Yeah.
So WRC talks about it, and they want the county to do something, but the county don't do anything.
So they brought it to a proposal.
So as a bit of history, the county had this quote for $300,000. They sent a questionnaire out to the residents and said, for $30,000, would you hook up for water? What do you think the answer was? So then it comes back to council and says, nobody wants water in Redlands. That's not true. They didn't want to spend $30,000 on it. If the county does it, and does it the way they was on the thing, yeah, it would cost $30,000. But they've come up with this solution. This is the most cost-effective solution. They will put in their own hookups. All they want is the ability to have a main line there. That's $75,000 to put in the line. A contribution from the county. And as I said, the Alberta government put in $60 to get it there.
I don't think that it's fair to say that the county's at fault either. So, but WRC has not brought this forward yet, have they? No, it's not.
I can explain a little further. It's kind of like, it's not comparing apples to apples. There's one level of service that the county standards would be if we did it. It would be engineered a certain way, and it's a different standard. I'm not going to say higher or lower. It's a different standard other than when WRC looks at it, they look at it as more of a rural connection, which is cisterns and all kinds of different things. There was discussion at WRC about, well, because there's so many houses there, do we need to have meter vaults in? Can we save money in that? Can we put the meters in the house like we would do in a hamlet? We've had that discussion. So there has been work done, but it is about the money. So I appreciate that you would throw the motion because I don't want this to die, Glenn, to be honest. So I would like to make a motion then that we would direct staff to work with WRC and WRC representatives to get a solution that will work and come back to the next council meeting.
A proposal.
Proposal, yeah.
Yeah, and I did want to clarify that a letter would not be sufficient for me or a motion from WRC. It would need to be a fulsome proposal outlining everything.
For sure, operating guideline, like we have to figure out who's going to run it and have agreements in place, and I think we can do that and make sure it's satisfactory to administration, because ultimately, after we're gone, staff have to run this and make sure it works and lasts a long time. So.
And I would just like to clarify, Councillor Kester, with all due respect, I completely acknowledge that the water line runs through Redland, and that obviously differentiates this situation from some of our other hamlets. And I will also echo what Deputy Reeve Clausen just said. I don't recall if these quotes that the county received and brought forward a fulsome proposal to council in 2020, March of 2020. And I would echo what Deputy Reeve Clausen said. It is broken down into like a wheatland cost and then a homeowner cost. I won't reference numbers. I don't think this was public, but it was about 1/3-ish was basically for the work that is in the proposal that we're seeing now, and about 2/3 was under homeowner cost. And again, like Deputy Reeve Clausen said, there may be ways to mitigate some of those costs. And I know our administration would also work with the residents to look for the most efficient way, but it does also have to meet our standards. And one of my concerns, even if WRC is assuming responsibility, at the end of the day, this is infrastructure in our municipality that at the end of the day, I'm sure there is some onus on us, some responsibility, depending on how it's structured. And that's what I want to ensure, that we're not exposing the ratepayers of Wheatland County to a liability just if we do not do our due diligence. So in terms of timing, our administration was working on this in 2020 and did bring forward a proposal. They've been, I believe, open to working on this since then. To me, it's a process issue. And if this was being done through WRC, Councillor Custer, I think you sat on WRC for the last year, I believe. I am comfortable considering a proposal coming forward from WRC, but it needs to be fulsome, outlining all costs, all responsibilities, and how it will be broken down. Yeah, absolutely. So you put a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
Shanna, would you be able to just read the motion back? I'm sorry.
I also believe there was a point in there about bringing it back to the next council meeting. Just to note on that, that may be a challenge for administration. So the WRC board meets once a month. I think we're just trying to confirm the exact date that they're going to meet. The board members or previous board members probably would know. I think it's mid-month for some reason. So our next meeting is on May 19th, May 17th. So just given that date, it probably would be hard to bring back a fulsome proposal outlining a distribution system in an existing hamlet. Not saying that we don't want to do it. I just think we will struggle to meet that deadline for council, just kind of speaking from a realistic term. We can attempt for June, but even the early meeting in June probably still would be a struggle as well. So ultimately, to me, we're probably looking at, just from a realistic standpoint, the second meeting in June or the first meeting in July until we actually bring back any sort of proposal, because we do have to work in conjunction with the WRC as well. And, you know, it's kind of hard linking two organizations together to work jointly on a project, and a project with a water distribution system as well, with a board that only meets once a month. Certainly the board could have a special meeting to discuss it, but those are just kind of the hurdles that administration probably would believe that we'd have to overcome for the timeliness of it anyway. So thank you.
Sorry.
Deputy Reeve Clausen, then Councillor Custer.
We didn't have a meeting this last month because there wasn't a bunch of business to discuss at WRC, to be honest, but I could see a facilitation of a meeting where we could bring all the parties maybe together in one day or a couple hours and kind of figure some out. I mean, we all have a little, I'm sure staff have some stuff that they want to see done. I'm sure WRC has some stuff, and instead of waiting, if we can get everybody together, maybe not, and try to get all the heads together and resolve it.
Yeah,
more efficient, I think.
Yes, for sure. And we definitely would work towards that as well. Another thing to factor in out of administration's control is the WRC administration's workload as well. I don't really have an idea of what their workload is. I do believe it is fairly heavy. I'm just not quite sure exactly what it would entail, though.
And I also would like to remind everyone that council's involvement in prior pipelines and any work done by WRC has been minimal. So I don't want to see council dive into this and require a bunch of extra stuff for what it is. I mean, it's just a pipeline going down the right of way in the hamlet that'll probably never ever be worked up or anything. This hamlet is 100 years old. There was grain elevators there, but the people have decided to stay there and they'll live there and they want a community there. There's a new house under construction there. There's one recently being built there. It's a nice hamlet. They just need some water. And with water, who knows, there might be some more come built there. But it casts a bad light on the county. Oh, can't have water because it's right there. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Get together, but remember who's responsible for what. And bring back a proposal that we can vote on and get this done. And I don't see any reason why it can't be done sooner than later.
So does the proposal say, or does the motion say to bring forward a proposal?
Okay. Had the word solution, would you accept a
Solution is the
friendly
word, but
amendment?
Proposal, I would definitely
Proposal?
change it to that, and then we could,
And I don't think there was a timeline on the motion, so if administration could just bring it back when it's ready. If that's,
and I will,
was that your intention?
yes, it was, and I will get a hold of WRC board and try to facilitate this as quick as possible and get, I think at WRC they want the same things, so I think we can get together and get everything done, get an agreement done, I'm hoping, and be very positive.
And I do just want to clarify for the record, I don't think this should reflect poorly on Wheatland County. Our administration has worked diligently at council's direction to find a water solution in Redland. All of the work that was requested was carried out in fulsome detail and provided to council. If there was further work that needed to be done on it, that should have been done at council direction to find a solution that is amenable to the residents. But I in no way think that it's fair to say that Wheatland County or this council said that they can't have water. I might be paraphrasing, but that was never a direction of this council. It was just trying to do it in a fair and diligent way to our standards. If the county is spearheading it and if WRC is spearheading it, then it needs to actually be by that board direction through their governance processes. We have a motion on the floor. Any further questions or discussion?
I think it would be a good idea to put a timeline on this.
I think one thing that administration is highlighting is I note monthly, well, at each meeting on our council resolution tracker, I understand administration has been working with WRC administration on some of our agreements, and that's been an ongoing process for several months anyways. It might be a year. I'd have to look at timelines, but it's been an ongoing challenge, and I think some of that was what CAO Henderson was referencing with workload for administration at WRC.
Yes, that's just the kind of the unknown factor for us is that, well, through the chair, is just the workload of the WRC administration. A timeline on the motion definitely can work, just as an amendment, if Councillor Clausen would accept that amendment. And also another opportunity for any councillor to ask about any resolution that's outstanding. A great opportunity to do that is at every council meeting during the resolution tracker. So if council is unhappy with the speed of a resolution or if something is getting unresolved, there's a great opportunity at that point for all of council to address any outstanding resolutions as well, to kind of see the status of certain ones as well. Thank you.
Resolution trackers once a month. I will be bringing this up at every council meeting from here on in.
Just through the chair. So administration does bring forward the resolution tracker every meeting. Every meeting. Just so council is apprised of every single resolution that's going and any updates that we do have. So if council does make a resolution on it, it will be available for discussion every single meeting and kind of the status updates. Typically on that resolution tracker report as well, we do try to provide administration updates. Actually, all of senior leadership takes a look and they do edit and provide updates on where things are. Sometimes it is just more generic updates if things are kind of progressing quickly. But something like that, we can definitely provide more fulsome update on the resolution track as well, just so everyone has it and it's a publicly available document as well for everyone to kind of review. Thank you.
Okay. Just so council knows, I will be bringing it up every council meeting, and I'm hoping for progress every time. I don't think there's going to be a problem WRC meeting with Wheatland County.
I'm crafting an email as we speak.
Yeah,
to try
I'm
to get
sure
everything
they'll be
together.
here.
Are you amending your motion or leaving it as is?
If council, I don't want to, if a timeline helps or if a priority helps, I guess, what would,
Some of the challenge is it just being outside of our
yeah. We're all going to work
control.
together as much as we can, so.
Yeah, what I would just say is it's easier to make a timeline and then say we can't meet it than to just leave it open. So I would suggest June. Like the first council meeting in June to have it.
Bring forward what we have in June, I guess. Hopefully we have it all done.
Sure, we can bring back an RFD. I think it may be a challenge, just speaking very frankly and truthfully. So the next scheduled WRC board meeting is May 18th. So that is after our next council meeting. So our council meeting is on the 17th. The board meeting is on the 18th. We can certainly try. The motion can definitely be amended. Council has the ability to amend their motions and whatever motion forward at any time. And we'll bring back what we can in an RFD to council for information. Thank you.
Are you amending with a date?
Yeah, I think we can bring it back for June.
Yeah, June 7th is
Yeah.
the regular meeting.
Yeah, because I anticipate we're going to have a meeting with WRC prior to that. A special one, I'm sure.
You got that, Shanna? Is everybody clear on the motion? Any further questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We have a 9:30 appointment, and I'm very sorry for being late. I'd like to welcome CAO Michelle Toombs from the Marigold Library System. CAO Toombs, if you would like to come to the podium and just introduce yourself. Thank you for coming in. Back to order.
Mute off.
Good morning. We'll call the meeting back to order. Welcome.
Madam Reeve, are you picking me up here? Madam Reeve, councillors, Brian, Tracy, Shannon, administrative staff, it is my pleasure to be here to speak to you about the Marigold Library System, and I hope I bring good news. We've had an in-person board meeting this past Saturday that Amber was in attendance at, and there were a lot of good information sharing, and I think we're in a good place. So I am very pleased to be able to talk to you. There are documents that were handed out today that were only just approved and released on Saturday at our AGM. That included our annual report and something else that I would like to talk to you about, which we call the value of your investment, which is a tracking system that we have for the money that you send to us and how we spend it to provide library services for your residents and the patrons of our library services. And you know, libraries aren't quiet these days, and I hope we're not yelling at anyone because things have changed a lot in the library world, and we feel it's more about people than it is about books or things. What I'd like to talk about today, I have a big list, is I want to first of all thank you for the loan and to assure you that we have every intention of paying it off very quickly. We've already sent $110,000 towards the payment of the $500,000 loan that we received from you in February. And we also have a conditional sale on our headquarters building in Marigold, the old one that is. And that won't be concluded until July, but certainly our first intention, and of course in an agreement with you as well, is to pay off the loan in full. So you don't have to wait to 2038 for that money. I don't think you'll be waiting at all. I also want to talk to you about the 2-minute video that we had prepared to share that with you so that you can see sort of an overview of why Marigold exists and the services we provide. I'd like to introduce you to the value of your investment documents that we shared with our board on Saturday. And I'd like to ask you to review and consider signing the Marigold Agreement revision, as well as the new schedule for levy rates for 2023 and 2024. So, because there's lots to do, I will get going. see if this works. Thank you. Cute.
I can watch that for a while.
Thank you for your technical help. We need it. So the next question that we get quite often is, are libraries still relevant? And do we need actual physical collections? And the answer to that is 90% of our circulation is physical collections through books and AV. Yes, the ebook collections are growing and the use of them is growing, and certainly we saw a lot of that during COVID, but we're seeing that there's still a relevance and importance to having physical materials. And more important even is the fact that you have a physical space where people can come. And as you saw from the video, in the Wheatland County, we don't just have the physical libraries in the 6 locations that are commonly used by your residents. We also have the book deposit in Rosebud, and we have the lending lockers in Hazar, and we have the mail service that is subscribed to by over 100. I'm looking at my numbers, 114 people. That would be the memberships. I want to share some membership information for you because that's kind of I guess a relevancy or a way of showing that we are serving and making a difference in your Wheatland County. I went back to 2012, which was a presentation that I did for Wheatland County. And at that time we had about 1,000 and some patrons. Today, we have 2,187 card holders. Now, that can be individuals but it also can be households, because that is an option for people. And people who have cards usually acquire materials not just for themselves, but for their families or for their friends, or a greater number of people. So let me tell you about those numbers. Top marks go to Carsland. Carsland has 323 card holders. Donna, that's terrific. Hussar has 110. And when I give you these numbers, it's people who actually live in Wheatland County, who have declared Wheatland County addresses as their address. Strathmore has 1,049. Drumheller has 174. And as I mentioned, Marigold has 114. So in total, that comes to 2,187 card holders. That's a pretty good penetration. So this is a picture of Marigold, and in your package there is something we call the profile, and it tells you in a nutshell just about Marigold, what our budget is and why we exist, and how we're formed and what our partnerships are. But one of the things that we like to show people when you come to our headquarters, and I hope you will come and see our new headquarters, is the map of the area that we serve, which goes from the Saskatchewan border to the BC border. And you can see the circle around Wheatland County, and it's quite a large portion of Marigold. We do have 43 municipalities, and we have 44 people on our board. So it's not a small space, and thankfully we have now a very large meeting room that's well appointed, and we could actually get all of our members who attended on Saturday, plus our staff, plus guests, in that room. The acoustics were pretty good, and it was a pretty successful meeting. So that'll be very much different than the little room we had where we could hardly squeeze in 15 people. Marigold is the third largest library system in Alberta after Calgary and Edmonton, and that's based on our population that we serve, which is around 348,000 people. That includes the residents of Siksika and Stoney Nakoda nations. We operate in accordance with the Libraries Act, and when we get to talking about the Marigold Agreement, I will tell you that the Marigold Agreement hasn't changed a lot, although it has been revised recently. The last revision before that was 2008, and it's very much patterned on the Libraries Act. So the language that we use and the obligations that we have and the services that we provide are actually aligned, not only with the Libraries Act, but with all the other library systems in Alberta, and there are 7 of them. So here's a list of the things that we do directly for Wheatland County residents. And we've covered some of them in the video, and we've covered some of them as I was speaking. But I think it's our obligation, when a county does not have its own library board, to represent and provide services to all the residents of that county. And we do that in various ways, as I've described. I'm going to scoot through these pretty quickly, I hope. Nearby libraries, of course, get a lot of the services that we provide, and we track those pretty closely throughout the year. So I did want to talk a little bit about the value of your investment report. We provide what I'm calling back-facing services. We don't overlap what our local libraries provide. But we do provide those services, which I call a product, that makes it possible for libraries to provide service. And that includes things like collections, IT services, consultation, deliveries, marketing. The list is quite long. And we're happy to have the excellent relationships that we do. And we're also proud of the fact that because we have an agreement, a master agreement, all of your residents can access any of the services within Marigold, any of the libraries, return their materials to any library. And we have a very active delivery process where we process 2.2 million items a year that go either back to their owning location after they've been borrowed, or to another destination where someone has made the request and wishes to pick up the material. And those materials flow all over the province of Alberta. I've mentioned to you that libraries have transformed a lot in the last, I don't know, I've been in this business for 46 years, and 20 years at least, if not 30, have seen immense and marvelous changes within the library system. A focus now on service, a focus on bringing people together, talking to them and finding out what their needs are, and providing excellent customer service. Back in the day, we really curated our collections and we protected our collections, and that was the main focus. And to be quite honest with you, collections are still important, but they're not necessarily the main focus. We're focused on our people. So one of the things that we have seen a great change in is the Library of Things. And that is a short list, actually. There's probably now about 150 to 200 things that we catalog, including bicycles, and all the things on the list. The Ghost Hunters kit is the one that is interesting to people, and that's something that was acquired by Cochrane Library, and it comes with some electronic equipment and a journal. And people borrow it and they do their thing and they write down what their observations were. So the journal travels with the kit so that the next person who borrows it is quite popular. It's on hold quite a lot. The next person who borrows it kind of can look through and see what's there. And they do claim that there are ghosts in Cochrane. So, typically the Library of Things are things that are acquired by the local library and borrowed by the community in that area. We don't deliver bicycles or power tools, for example. So Marigold has just moved in. Well, we've been there since September. We share the facility with the Western Irrigation District. It's been a partnership that has worked out very well. It started in 2017 when we approached WID to acquire some land that they owned in Strathmore, and they suggested that we do the partnership, and it has evolved from that point on. And the cap that the board set in 2017 for that project, our portion, was $8 million. And to this point in time, we believe that we have been able to achieve that because we're almost finished with our expenses at about $7.2 million. So a saving of $800,000 is what we achieved, in large part because of the partnership, because we were able to share the costs. For example, that wonderful room that we occupied is part of a common area and a condo corporation that will be formed later on this year. So, and it's a great facility. The staff are very content. We're able to be far more efficient, and we're calling it future-proofed so that we can be there for a long time and continue to grow and provide more service for our patrons and our residents. And again, we're so grateful for the support that you've given Marigold, that you've been behind us. And I have to say that we pretty much could have squeaked through without the loan, but we didn't know that. Last May, when we started looking into it and starting to think about and prepare the paperwork, and then in the fall we had the conversations with Tracy and Brian, and at that point we didn't know, and we didn't even know at the beginning of January if we would be okay, because of a couple of our very large municipalities had delayed their payment. We would have been in trouble, but we did receive the $500,000 in the middle of February, and it has been great insurance for us. So we're super grateful for your support. And I think when we have paid it off and all is said and done, we will be still extremely thankful for the support and the kind of working together, the kind of collaboration that means so much in our world. So I want to talk a little bit about the Marigold Agreement again. I gave you a bit of a preview. It's a master agreement that has been in place since 1981 when Marigold was formed, so we're a little over 40 years old now. And it was a master agreement that was outlined in the Libraries Act, and it does a number of things, but mostly it defines how membership works. And the members that we have are the 43 municipalities who have chosen to belong and chosen to form Marigold. And the language has pretty much stayed the same in the Marigold Agreement, but from time to time it helps to have an update in the language. And a couple of points in the language that we wanted to bring to your attention. First of all is population. We've also always calculated our levies, which is the revenue that we get from municipalities, on a per capita basis that's based on population at a provincial level. We've called it official provincial population. And that the population was calculated by Municipal Affairs for many years, and then it switched. A couple of years ago it switched to Treasury, and it might switch again. So in the agreement we changed the language so that it says the Government of Alberta, as opposed to specifying Municipal Affairs in particular. We also historically had something in our agreement that said that anything that Marigold purchased would continue to be the property of Marigold, and that included our collections. And for many years we even capitalized those collections. And that didn't make a lot of sense because A, we don't want those collections back. We don't have the space to store them. Secondly, collections nowadays are like a river. They come and they go. They satisfy the people who want to borrow those collections, but they're not always useful if they get old or if they get outdated or if their information is incorrect. That's when we have to do what we call deselection. And also, I think it's just correct that our libraries who have invested in Marigold will have access to those collections, and so it will be there. So in the Marigold Agreement, we changed our language so that anything that we purchase and assign to a member library is their property. It's actually the property of the municipality. So for Wheatland County, that means that you ultimately own the collections in Carsland and Gleason, which is a good thing. And then we also had some language in the updated agreement that talked about membership and why membership is so important. We're not a client service organization. We're not based on a system where you can pick and choose what services you have, because together as a membership, we can provide better service at a cheaper cost. Some of the advantages of being in a membership like a co-op is that you get the advantage of long-standing vendor contracts where we get 40% off of our materials that we purchase, and many other vendor contracts. We also have access to a library management system, which is really crucial and fundamental to our existence, which keeps our inventory, which allows for circulation and cataloging, the online catalog, and a whole range of other services. And we do that through a collaborative too. So that's mainly the things in the Marigold Agreement that have changed, and in a letter that was provided in the document package that we sent out that came to mayors and reeves. We have pointed out what those changes are. So we're hoping that your council will take a look at those, and if you agree with them, you will sign them and send them back to Marigold. We need to have 60% of our municipalities sign the agreement and 60% of our population. And the other part of that package that we sent to Reeve Link was Schedule C. So what happens with Schedule C? Schedule C is the last page of the master agreement, and it's an amendment, and it comes out every couple of years, and it lists the rates, or the levy rates, the per capita levy rates. And the one that's in the package is 2023 and 2024. And that's the next upcoming series. For the last 3 years, we have not changed or increased our levy. We've kept it at the 2020 level. For the last couple of years, prior to this year, we have also kept population at the 2019 level. So now we're seeing the pressures of of inflation, fuel costs, utility costs, and all the things that you're very familiar with, I know, in your own operation. But we also have to keep up. So we have asked for an 11-cent increase in our Schedule C levy rates. And that is the equivalent of about 1.8% increase when you take out the factor of population increase. Wheatland County is growing, but perhaps not as much as Airdrie or Cochrane. But anyway, that's how that works. And again, we're asking council to review that and consider that. And if you agree to it, to sign it and send it in, because we need 60%. When our master agreement is signed and agreed to, when our Schedule C is also signed and agreed to, we will merge the two to make it a current document. So. Now, I want to go back a little bit to the value of your investment, because that's the stapled package that's in. And if I can give you a minute to flip through it, what you will see is how much Wheatland paid, and that's based on the per capita, that's based on the population as well as the levy rates. And then if you flip through, you'll see Gleason and Carsland towards the beginning, and then you'll see what value we feel that we have provided to you with the services we've provided to Gleason and Carsland, and we've also then included Hussar and Standard and Rockyford and Strathmore, and even, I'm not even sure if we put in Drumheller or not, but the whole objective of providing you with these reports, we have done this for about, I would say, 7 or 8 years, is to give you a sense of what we are counting and how we are keeping track of the money that you send us, and to report back to you. It's a fairly onerous and complicated process, actually. We have large spreadsheets that I call the kahuna, where we keep track of every conversation and every business transaction we have and so on. So we're also able, through our library management software, to keep track of all of the costs of the materials that we purchase and the time that we spend on processing those materials. And we have sort of a range of costs, or a set average cost that we use for the IT consultations that we do, the times that we go out. We did over 1,500 help desk tickets in the past year. We have 3 IT staff. They also made over 50 in-person visits to locations to either install or fix IT equipment. We have over 500 computers in the libraries that we serve, and we have about 30 servers in our IT central hub. So we also support, well, we pay for the internet. Of course, we have to have the SuperNet. That's a requirement from the province. And we also keep that network, we maintain that network, and it's really important because in order to circulate materials, each of our member libraries have to have the SuperNet, and they have to have that library management software. And then we do other things as well. We do central file sharing, and we provide them with all the software and the licensing and all the warranties. I don't think any library, certainly not the ones in Marigold, could survive if they had to pay for those services on a cost basis. So that's just one of the aspects of those value of your investment. So typically, the value that we're providing is a lot greater than the levy investment. And how can we reconcile that? Well, we are getting some funding from the provincial government. We are getting about $1.9 million from the provincial government through grants. And we're also getting some money from the provincial government for a per capita. So the money that we get on behalf of Wheatland residents is actually turned around and given back to our members as service grants. So Carsland and Gleason, for example, get almost $10,000 each from us as cash that they can use towards their budgeting. We don't have requirements as to how they spend the money, but we do advise them that it's really intended for resource sharing. So you can't be part of Marigold unless you're willing to share materials with each other. So that's the logic with that. So I don't know how I'm doing for time, but I think I've covered a lot of material, and I'm really welcoming your questions. And I just want to say thanks and goodbye, because my retirement is coming up pretty soon at the end of June. So I've really always enjoyed coming to councils. It's been one of the most fun parts of my work, and I'm going to miss it all. But thank you. Thank you for your support.
Does anybody have any questions for Michelle?
I'm going to miss you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's been a very emotional time at the board. We're going to miss Michelle and her leadership, and as well our board chair is retiring after a long service to the board as well. So we're going to miss Linda also. Through Michelle's leadership and Linda's leadership of our board, Marigold has provided support to our libraries that have facilitated incredible work through each of our libraries, but also the library services in our communities. And I think there's a lot of economies of scale and synergies that really was the reason Marigold was founded, that build our communities and contribute to our communities. I know on a personal note, libraries always really reinforced like my children's ability to research and critically analyze things and enjoy reading, having access to resources that we wouldn't have been able to afford as a family, and it was really invaluable for our family, and I know I hear that from a lot of families in Wheatland as well. I also just want to say that we do have 43 member municipalities at Wheatland, and that's a large board, but we do have an executive that does a lot of the heavy lifting for the board, and it's through their due diligence and the careful oversight of the administration that the capital bill did come in at about 10% under budget, which is particularly remarkable when you put that in the context of the supply chain issues and escalating costs that we saw through the pandemic. So the board was very grateful for that fiscal prudence. Also, just for full disclosure to the board, we do have a very specific reserve policy, and Marigold holds about 2 months of contingency in our operating reserve. That can go up to 3 months of contingency. And it is important that we have that because, as Michelle referenced, sometimes there is uncertainty just in terms of timing of when municipalities make their payments. I think the province is somewhat more predictable, but there can be some variance as well in when those payments flow through. So just for continuity of operations, those are important. And we did have a capital reserve as well, but that was drawn down substantially for the building. But we do also do careful capital reserves for things like our vans, for our sort of dispatch of our resources. And Michelle has some pretty impressive statistics. I can't think off the top of my head, but the vans drive from here to, I'll let you share, because it's very impressive.
Well, in the past, we've said they've driven to Halifax and back like 29 times, or down to Orlando. And when I've mentioned that in the past at various councillors, they say, we didn't know you did that. We didn't know you drove there.
Yes, just symbolizing the amount of transfer of resources. We do not transfer resources to Halifax or Orlando, but they really do. And that's done very strategically. There was a new sortation system that I was really grateful to see on the weekend that has made that more efficient as well. And I also just wanted to emphasize, Michelle did share, but the board had not increased our rates in 3 years. So we did feel, and that was partially because we also didn't want any, I think I can share this, we didn't want any misconception that any sort of municipal funds were going into the capital project either. So we were very, very careful with our finances through that time. We will continue to be very, very careful. It is a very fiscally prudent board representing a number of, there's a high expectation for that prudence just given where some of the funding, where all of the funding comes from. And so we will continue that careful oversight. Any questions for Michelle?
Just very grateful for the service you provide. Thank you so much. I'm glad to see that we have some rural libraries that are managing to continue to operate and serve the community. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and absolutely on behalf of all of Council, thank you for your leadership over the last more than decade, and to Marigold for it really is a backbone for our libraries, or a foundation that enables them to do what they do. We have incredible volunteers and staff at our libraries as well, but it really does it makes it so much more that they can offer than what we could individually through libraries. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful having Reeve Link on our board. And there's so much insight, and the volunteerism that our board provides is incredible. We have a board with a lot of committees, and those committees are fully appointed. There are like 29 people who are volunteering for those committees at any time, given time. So we're grateful for that. I tell you a quick story, because sometimes we just get lucky. And we were very lucky with our vans, because there's been supply chain issues, as you know, with replacing vans. And so we had to wait over a year to replace one of our delivery vans that already had over 300,000 kilometers on it. So finally, when the van came in, we had been expecting that it would cost nearly $40,000, and they said, "It's costing you $25,000. And we said, "Oh, that's really great news," because we could trade in our van that had 350,000 kilometers on it for a significant trade-in value, because there's such demand, because vans are not easy to get these days, and there are a lot of people doing deliveries. We were very lucky with that. So we do watch our pennies really carefully.
Yeah, very much so. Well, wonderful.
Retirement.
Thank you. Thank you. Some traveling? Yes?
To Orlando, maybe.
The East
think
Coast
Halifax
is kind
first.
of first. Yeah, Halifax.
Maybe past. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you.
Administration did provide an RFD. Oh, I just clicked on the wrong page. Starting on page 53, Marigold is looking for, we could first accept the presentation, then we are looking for direction to sign both the revised master agreement and the Schedule C.
I'll move that council accept the presentation from Michelle Toombs, CEO of Marigold Library System, as information.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move that council authorize the Reeve to sign the revised Marigold Library Agreement and Schedule C per capita levy rates for 2023 and 2024.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you so much, Michelle. We'll move to 3.1. My report was included in the council package.
Just to the chair, there is a few bylaws that still need
yes.
some reading. So the first 2.11 and 2.12,
Yes.
just for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies. I actually did look up because I felt like I had missed something, but I didn't look high enough. My apologies. We'll move to page 11, 2.11.
Good morning, Council. Brad Bullock presenting. This is a recommendation for a bylaw road closure. This will be first reading. So administration has received a request to close portions of the existing original undeveloped municipal road allowance, and the locations can be found on page 15 and 16 of the agenda. So the request has been circulated internally to staff, and no concerns were raised other than a request for a 75-foot right-of-way stub to remain at the north end of Range Road 234 to accommodate an approach to maintain legal access to North 31 22 23-4. This request has been accommodated by the requesting landowners and is represented on the attached maps. from the submitted plan drawing for the area of closure and consolidation. The proposed areas of closure do not create any landlocked parcels, and if approved, would be disposed to the applicant to be consolidated with their existing land. A road closure bylaw requires first reading, followed by a public hearing to be held at a later date, then submission to Alberta Transportation for ministerial approval, followed by second reading and third reading upon ministerial approval. So council has two recommended resolutions. One is for approval of the first reading of the bylaw, and the second resolution would be for scheduling of a public hearing for the July 5th council meeting. And that's my report. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council approve first reading of bylaw 2022-12 for the closure and disposal to the applicant, being the adjacent landowner, of a portion of the existing original undeveloped municipal road allowance described below.
Councillor Eggert has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move that council schedule a public hearing for bylaw 2022-12 for July 5th, 2022 at 9 a.m. in Wheatland County Council chambers.
Any questions or discussion? In favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.12. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of council. Chris Perman, Senior Peace Officer. I'm here this morning to present bylaw 2022-13, which is the noise bylaw. This came about due to a council resolution on February 1st directing administration to review the noise bylaw and bring back recommendations. Based on that resolution, it was determined that the best course of action was to send this bylaw to legal for review, and discussion ensued between with legal, and a lot of what is in the package, being the old bylaw, the new bylaw, it was determined that a lot of the material in the old bylaw, language was out of date and covered far too many different circumstances. So, example of which would be the construction noise and timing, and also like distances between hamlets, and so on. So, what this new bylaw does propose is that it takes away a lot of these random definitions. It provides clarity to the bylaw and a very strict criteria to be used when determining whether or not an offense has been committed under the noise bylaw. Administration has reviewed this and is now looking just for council's direction, please.
Any questions regarding the bylaw?
So I see that you've kind of written in a lot of where you're able to give consideration to each individual situation, I guess. So would you see that if they're like farming beside a hamlet or something like that, and you were up earlier and working later at night, obviously you would judge that differently than you would construction noise or something to that effect?
And through the chair, yes, it would fall under section 4.3. First of all, the nature of the noise, obviously an agricultural operation, which is a priority within the county. The volume, the recurrent intermittent, of course it's a temporary measure being where the field is. Time of day, seeding and harvest, obviously people who live close by know that an agricultural operation can run 24 hours a day during those times. Yep. The proximity of that noise to sleeping facilities, the approved land uses, and the nature of the event, of course, which is an approved event, and any other factor there. So that's the criteria that we would use for any situation now that would arise from it. And one thing that legal put in here, and I just want to just highlight on it, was a reference to what calls a reasonable person. And the reason behind that in what we discussed is that what's reasonable to someone is not reasonable to another. And so therefore we have to weigh the balance between what is happening, the nature of the disturbance. Is it someone who has sensitive hearing? Is it someone who just doesn't like what is going on around them? We have to weigh those options when we take these into consideration. So it would all be handled in the same way.
So you'd be the reasonable person.
We would be the determining factor whether or not the noise was reasonable based on all the factors and including a statement from the person who is affected by it.
That was one of my questions too, I was just wondering about the possibility of maintaining like an explicit reference to an exception for agriculture. And my rationale was more just around like expectations for ratepayers, like if you read the bylaw and there was that explicit exception. My other question is just, I note in 4.4, construction can go from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And I know with the situation that we have been dealing with for the last several months, a one-day reprieve when the construction schedule would go 13 days and then 1 day off was quite long for the ratepayer within the vicinity. So then my question was, and you probably are aware of like the specific situation, but even more generally, if there was construction that was like created by necessity, like significant impact through noise, does this still provide discretion to limit that beyond these hours and days?
Yes, it does. That is in the criteria.
Okay.
And also, I will just, through the chair, legal actually put a good indication in for exempting or not specifically exempting agricultural operations, and it is quite a humorous thing, but it could be feasible in the fact that I could drive my combine in town, park it in front of the store, and leave it running for 12 hours, and the person can say, well, it's an agricultural implement, so therefore it's an agricultural operation, which is why they chose not to exempt specific activities. Everything can be handled under the specific criteria.
Madam Reeve to Council, just to supplement Senior PO Perman's comments, one of the benefits of a bylaw is obviously it's rather fluid and amendable, and what I want to just point out to Council is that a Municipal Planning Commission obviously does have a discretion over developments through the development permit, and oftentimes the Municipal Planning Commission provides a condition with respect to hours. So just for Council's information, there are references between obviously the noise bylaw, which communicates, and through the development process as well. So I just wanted to ensure that Council was aware that the Municipal Planning Commission as a body often combs through, and our development officer provides that body conditions with respect to hours and stuff. Typically, we know when we go through the planning process that there are, construction management plans that are submitted, which do have a construction plan with hours. So oftentimes, we'll provide the Municipal Planning Commission hours to consider with respect to construction, taking nuisance into consideration vis-a-vis the noise bylaw.
Just to build on that, my only concern would be, say, a development permit that would also fall under MGA Section 619, where you would have that shared jurisdiction with the province. And that's where my concern would be by having these hours in the bylaw, just because I know it was more challenging just because of the interplay between jurisdiction. So I do still have concern about this, and it's more of an enforceability concern and what would hold up if the bylaw specifically references like Monday through Saturday, 7 to 9, that if it is, and that's specifically referencing like noise that would annoy or disturb the peace of any other person, I just want council to imagine a construction activity adjacent to your property and then the enforceability of this bylaw, given that there's sort of that provision for construction noise in those times. And I mean, even 2 days or something, but then my challenge is there would also be, less impactful noise, which we don't want to unduly limit either. So I don't know what the solution is. I know how much it can impact quality of life for adjacent landowners if there's persistent noise 13 days in a row, and specifically for our agricultural producers who maybe don't have the reprieve of leaving for work during the day. So you have that essentially impacting you, your family, your livestock, sort of for potentially 14 hours a day, or potentially 6 days out of every 7. And I don't know the answer. Councillor Kester, and then Councillor Kester, and then Councillor Bigger.
I like the way you started off, a reasonable person. I think that's our given, a reasonable. Construction has to come, farming has to come, and be up to you to do it. And if we get complaints that it ain't working, then we'll bring it back. I think as a reasonable person, you know that this combining has to be done, but the combine can't sit in front of the store either. And if there's construction noise that has to be done in a timely manner, we'd have to judge that. I'm fine with that.
Councillor Baker.
Under 619, we still have the ability to put in, like in our schedules, recommendations, right? So that depending on the construction, like what you're talking about, it's province, we still have the ability to change the schedule, right? Under that permit?
Only to the extent that the AUC, whatever provincial body, could be NRCB, AUC, whatever, AER, you can't do anything that would be in conflict or override. So, and they typically receive the noise impact assessments, construction schedules, all that type of thing typically will go to the provincial body. And so we are somewhat constrained at times if that's addressed in the provincial authorization. However, we've been told by provincial representatives that if we have a noise bylaw in place, that we can enforce our noise bylaw. And so I'm just looking for sort of clear enforceability within our own bylaw. So our noise bylaw would, like local bylaws, would need to be followed by any development, aside from a land use bylaw, which you would need to align to an AUC decision. But noise or nuisance or unsightly property, we can enforce those. Typically, yeah.
So, read through you to the rest of council. With respect to 619, obviously that is quite a complex dynamic when we go through the development process and when we refer to our bylaws. So part of the challenge that we had when we went through the legal review was precisely that. We heard from provincial counterparts that, of course, if the noise bylaw is structured in such a way that was fair, I think, and equitable with respect to 619 and doesn't overreach or overarch, we actually provided that in our legal review. There were specific examples that we could cite with specific developments that we've had obviously concerns about with ratepayers and adjacent properties in the past. So we pulled that kind of advice from our provincial counterparts and provided it to legal with respect to their evaluation of our existing bylaw and what we could amend or change. Obviously in front of you is, I would say, a 95% rewritten bylaw with new definitions and new process, taking that into concern. I will again advise and err back to, obviously through the development process, our development officers and planners provide reasonable conditions with respect to times, especially when it goes through a process that is of an upper level of government, such as the AUC, vis-a-vis through the MGA Section 619. So just as a level of comfort to council that we went through that process with legal for that review.
Just through the chair as well, just to supplement Matt and Chris's comments as well. Section 619 certainly can be problematic for municipalities for sure. But when you do read through 619, if you read that first section, 619 sub 1, a license, permit, approval, or other authorization granted by, and it says the bodies, prevails in accordance with this section over any statutory plan, land use bylaw, subdivision decision, or development decision by subdivision authority, development authority, subdivision and development appeal board, et cetera, et cetera. So that definitely doesn't say all bylaws of a county. Another great example would be a traffic control bylaw. Just because someone has approval doesn't mean they can be speeding kind of around the roads, right? And our nuisance bylaw as well. So just something to consider when you're actually referencing that section. It does specifically say land use bylaw and statutory plans, not bylaws themselves. Thank you.
100%. And that's the only reason I'm looking for the most enforceable noise bylaw, because from what I understood, we could still continue to enforce it. The AUC decision would not override that, so we could continue to enforce it. And that's where I do have some concern about the 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days straight. I'll just paint a picture for council if you want to envision a hammer drill adjacent to your property that's reverberating during calving or something like that. That can be a significant impact on you, your family, particularly when you're there 14 hours straight being exposed to that. Even the mental impact, the impact to your quality of life is significant. That being said, I don't want to unduly limit construction at all in the municipalities. So I guess that's where maybe there's just the reasonableness of the construction noise itself or something that can be addressed. I don't know if this allows that.
Yes, Madam Chair. Illegal feels that it most likely would, and it is extremely difficult. This is why noise bylaws are made the way they are, is because noise is such a subjective thing based on the circumstances. It is very difficult to pinpoint every scenario imaginable, which is why we request, and many other of bylaws of this nature provide a large overarching method to determine whether or not offenses are being committed. In some of those scenarios, we would also have to look at the length of time. And when I say time, not in the days factor, but in the weeks and months factor. The also hazard we run is if we start restricting certain activities, it applies to everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
So therefore, it is also not recommended to specifically exempt certain activities, but to have one overarching bylaw that the criteria applies to everything.
Just a reminder to the Reeve that we have an 11 o'clock appointment as well. So maybe potentially we could defer this discussion till after the appointment.
We'll see if we can wrap it up quickly. I don't have any further questions.
I was going to kick it forward and pass first reading. I'll make the motion that council provide first reading of bylaw 22-13, that being a bylaw to regulate noise which may disturb the peace.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move second reading of the bylaw.
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I move to grant permission to be granted to provide third and final reading of bylaw 2022-13.
All in favor?
Last person has to yell it.
Motion is carried unanimously.
Now I'll move that council provide third and final reading of bylaw 2022-13.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you for your work on that. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your time today. Take care.
We will move to our 11 a.m. appointment. Question to administration. This is an open session.
I believe we had scheduled for closed.
Okay. I will move us into closed session. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Hello, everyone. I'll be ending the conference call until the...
We've moved out of closed session. There's a motion arising from the presentation.
I'll move to accept the presentation for information.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. And move to 3.1. My reports included in the agenda. We had a really good strategic planning session and board meeting for Community Futures. And I want to thank MP Martin Shields. He's been hosting regular meetings with municipal leaders in his riding. He often invites MLAs to join him as well, and it's a good opportunity to hear provincially and federally what the priority issues are for our representatives there, and also for municipal leaders to share issues and updates on our municipalities. And I'm grateful for Michelle for presenting about the library. We did have a good board meeting. I believe the majority of what I would share from there was discussed already this morning. So I'll move my report be accepted as presented, and I'm happy to answer any questions. All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.2, Deputy Reeves' report.
Thank you. My report's on page 113 of the agenda. The usual meetings. SEWA, we've got the funds in place for the expression of interest, and we've got a steering committee that's going through that. There's a bunch of documents that they have to sign because these are major corporations, so we got to make sure everything's done properly. And I'm not on the steering committee, so I just get to hear the reports from it. We did do a presentation to RMA, a round table, and the hopes of SEWA is to maybe have a breakout room at some point in the future, and they will be requesting that from RMA as well, because they did the same at AMA. And yeah, if there's no questions, I'll present my report as information.
Any questions for Deputy Reeve Clausen? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.3, Division 1 Councillor Report.
Thank you. So my report is on page 114 of the package. I want to just talk about the housing conference that I went to, ASHA Housing Conference. It was a great opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about the various ministries that are involved really with housing and seniors and social housing, and how it all interlinks and how they're trying to kind of modernize and streamline legislation for these multi-ministry groups. So that was really good for me to understand and learn a little bit more about. There were Minister Pond was there, and Minister Copping, other senior people from different ministries. Attended lots of really good sessions, and heard from the floor different questions about things like the competency-based boards and things like that. Obviously, that's still top of mind for people. But I did think it was very worthwhile. Besides that, Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce is continuing on with their trade show planning, and I think Town of Strathmore is becoming more involved with the kind of marketing of the booths in the trade show. I think the chamber may have been overcommitted their abilities to get all of it done on their own. So I think grateful for Town of Strathmore to step in, help out with that. And then one other thing, this isn't on my report, but I did attend the hike for the hospice on Sunday, and it was a nice little crowd of people that attended, and so it was very well done, and it's gratifying to see community support for this amazing organization. So yeah, that was very good. One other thing I wanted to say is that Councillor Bigger received an email from a ratepayer asking, basically she was curious if Wheatland County was maybe not in support of the new lodge build or something like that. Councillor Bigger responded that in fact council had committed to matching funds from the town of Strathmore. They were donating land, and we were matching that in kind of cash towards this project. And she pointed out that me and Councillor Larson were on the board. And so I responded again to this ratepayer saying, and here I'll actually just read it because I'll need to have a little apology. I said, I'm one of the county councillors who sits on Wheatland Housing Management Body, and I just want to say that we are very committed to building a new lodge and hospice in Strathmore. We are at the point now where we have engaged a consultant to help with the financials for the building project. He will start work in June if all goes as planned. As councillors, we naturally ask questions about the project, especially since I'm new to being a councillor and new on the housing board, and sometimes the questions are difficult. However, it is the normal course of a project, and I assure you that we want this as much as anyone. As stewards of our county tax dollars, we are committed to ensuring that this project checks all the boxes: beautiful and affordable housing for our most vulnerable population. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. So on further reflection, this, because it was signed with my Shannon Laprise Division 1 councillor, I had sent it with the intention that I was speaking from a board member's perspective, and so I understand that when you're speaking as a councillor, you should not speak on behalf of council. And while we do support the project, I perhaps overstepped, and so I just want to apologize to council for that. And that's my report, so I'll move that unless anybody has any questions for approval, for acceptance.
Any questions?
I thought your answers were good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it does raise a question for me that I've been just contemplating, like whether we should do sort of just some communication around a council position. We do have the motion matching, I can't remember the exact wording, but essentially the contribution of the value of the land from the town. I know there's been a lot of questions and discussion and, you know, those types of things, but I do get approached at times by ratepayers being asked why we're opposed, and I have to explain that we're not opposed, that there have been questions and, you know, those types of things, but that we don't actually have a council position on the lodge per se. The Wheatland Housing Management Body is an autonomous organization, and while we are a municipality that's a member of that, but I just wonder if there, and just floating this for council's consideration, we don't even have to talk about it today, but just if there would be value in having some communication from a council perspective, just clarifying if there is a perception that there's opposition, or I have no idea where council's at.
Yeah.
Councillor Kester?
I've been mulling this over in my mind. Council could support the process that the housing board is going through. We have hired Derek Weiss, which was recommended to us by the ministry. His job is to complete documents on, I'll call it a performa of, so that'll be included in their operating costs, rents, and the ministry's going under revisions. We can actually charge market rates if the customer can afford it. So there'll be more criteria on that. Part of this thing, he's going to look into CMHC, provincial funding, and there'll be a municipal contribution too. and I don't know, he didn't know, he has to do the numbers, if the land and cash contribution will be sufficient. We are going under a review of the present lodge and then trying to determine a value there to put in the pro forma. And we have to be able to, I would hope, if we operate that lodge as a moneymaker, it should match whatever the loan would be, right? It's got to contribute, or we think of a different thing to do with it. So all those numbers are getting thrown in by this advisor, and we just have a motion to support the process that the housing body's going through right now to get these numbers. I think that would maybe go a long ways.
I don't know about a motion to that, because that's up to the housing board to go through that.
Yeah,
But
the
I
housing
think-
board is committed to it, for sure.
yeah.
So if you just support the process. Even.
But I do feel that there is questions coming out of ratepayers, like from everywhere, that just a little bit, and kind of where they're at, what they're doing, because she was quite thankful that she learned about that stuff. You know, what the process, what's happening in the process. That, like I explained to her that they've hired, or you explained that they've hired. I think they appreciate knowing where it's at, kind of thing, and what's going on. I think just more public. There was a lot of public interaction at the beginning, and now that's kind of faded because it's a little bit of unknown. But there is stuff that you guys are still doing, so keep the public informed of what's going on, and that, you know, this Eric guy is what his credentials are. Keep everybody informed on what's going on, and that the board is progressing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the word. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good idea.
I hear what you're saying. The first phase was an exciting phase.
Yeah.
Trying to round up the money is not so exciting.
Not so exciting, but it is important.
Yeah, it is probably the most important piece of it. And I think the next board meeting with our representatives here, I think you should bring it up, that we have to communicate something. I agree with that. If they can communicate that Wheatland County's in support of our process, I think would go a long ways too. I think there's fears out there. I've heard everything that we can't have the land anymore. There's so many gossip things out there. There's county isn't supporting it. Just say we support the process, and we'll see what comes.
Process. Like, I honestly
I'm
don't
just
know
telling you, the process is hire Derek Weiss, and he's performing the numbers. We're not doing anything with that, right? That's his job, to price it out. His job. That's his total job. We go supply maybe some wages, I don't know, but right? And we don't do the evaluation of the present lodge. We've hired that out. So we've hired consultants to move us through the stage, I guess. So that's all we can do.
I support
carry
the
on.
fact that you guys are looking at the financials of it, but I don't know if that's really how much weight
That's
that
all
carries.
we're doing. We haven't
I do support
decided.
that you need to look at that's such an important part. Yeah.
We have a motion on the floor to accept the Division 1 report, I believe. Any further questions, Deputy Reeve Clausen?
Yeah. Thanks, Shannon, for the report. I didn't feel there was an apology needed. I think you were coming in from a place of honesty and just trying to give good information as much as you could. I was on the email chain as well, and I never did respond. I totally slipped my mind, but from what I saw there was lots of good responses. So, you know, I think definitely something from the board, and I will be asking for this, an information package, an update, something so people have the answers on a document of some sort. where we're at timeline. I envision the thermometer in front of a church or,
Right.
that kind of thing. Just expectations. But we'll see how that goes.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Motion is carried. Perhaps we'll break for lunch. We can recess until 12:45 or reconvene then. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll call the meeting back to order. We'll start with agenda item 3.4, Division 3 Councillor Report.
Hello. My report is on the server. First of all, I will let everybody know about the Carsland Fire Hall grand opening. Open house on May 14th, Saturday at 12 o'clock, 12 to 4. Free barbecue, door prizes. Be really nice if any councillors could come. And with that, the next I wanted to talk about is the EDA conference. Went to? Great conference. I would. We covered quite a few things. I won't go into everything, but we talked about issues affecting manufacturing, as in labor shortage, energy costs, regulations, cost of raw materials, lack of skilled workers. Talked about international investing. I learned about investment locators, which I never knew even existed. Lots to learn, actually. It was very, very good. ReefLink was amazing at networking. She did very well, introduced us to a lot of people. I would recommend actually that councillors who are interested, a lot of municipalities had councillors there. And there was about 500 in attendance from their EDAs to councillors to staff. And it was an excellent conference. So I would recommend anybody for councils. I don't know, maybe not all council, but some council at least go to it once a year. There's only one once a year. The next thing I want to talk about is Carsland has a RV lot, and Muirfield should probably know about this too. They have, it is fenced, but some people did get in and tore apart trailers, did a lot of damage. They opened up some people had batteries they had put in there, and they broke into the doors, did a lot of vandalism, opened up their sides. The police were called. It happened to quite a few in the lot. So anyway, from that, the Speargrass Community Association is looking at getting cameras or some kind of alarm systems, but they need power. So the cost to get power to the RV lot would be quite a bit for them. So they're asking if they can pay for, like it would be no cost to ratepayers, but if they could use the power at the water treatment plant, which is right beside them. And I'm just wondering if I could make a motion to have staff maybe look into that possibility and see what the cost to Speargrass would be. Because Speargrass Associates said they're willing to pay for it, but yeah, just need to know an amount. So I'll leave a motion open if anybody has any questions. I'll answer them. Yeah.
I'm thinking if council's going to support power for our security cameras, we don't have any on the front of that water treatment plant, do we? If there's people running around doing damage, it wouldn't maybe hurt to have one on top of our building. I'm thinking if you would look at it at the time. Is one there fine? But yeah.
Yes, through the chair. I don't believe there is one there at this point. That could be an option for sure. It's not one that we had really thought of, just because it did cost money and it's kind of outside of our budget scope. We thought we'd bring it back to council for discussion and deliberation. But if that's a great option, and administration will implore that if this motion passes.
Yeah, they're looking, Speargrass is looking into the cameras, but they need power, of course, to run them, and looking to see if they could use the water treatment plant as their power source. They are looking at the same, they have, the water treatment plant has a fence, chain link fence, but it has the barbed top, and so they're looking at that too. Because that's an actual revenue for the association. So if people don't feel safe taking their trailers there, that they've lost that revenue. So, yeah. So I'll put that motion on the floor for staff to look into it anyway.
Any questions for Councillor Bayer?
I actually do. Muirfield's looking at the same thing for insurance-wise for their thing, and I know they've been asking. They're having trouble getting insurance, so I'll have to talk to you offline and find out who's providing insurance.
It's County, I believe.
I don't know. We have to check on that.
I'll check. Oh,
Yeah,
there is a
yeah.
meeting coming up. I'll check.
Okay,
But I
yeah.
think it's through the...
Because it might be able to help now. Thanks.
Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you. And with that, that's it. I'll make a motion to approve my report is presented.
Any other questions on the report? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.5, Division 4 Councillor Report.
I apologize. Stuff that is way too boring for anybody to really care about. I did not file my report. I did basically. I've only got two. I went to they have two council meetings, an ASB and an MPC that I attended, and they are all on social media, so they can all be looked up if you're really interested. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, I will move my report.
Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.6, Division 6 Councillor Report.
My report's on the web, or on the, what do we call it? Agenda package. Any questions? Otherwise, I'll move my report.
Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.7, Division 7 Councillor Report.
My report's on page 119. If there's any questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, I'll move my report to be accepted.
Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.71, Agricultural Service Board meeting minutes.
That was the April 6th meeting. It starts on page 120. I'll take any questions if you want.
Any questions? Perhaps just a motion to accept for
Then I will
information.
move that the minutes for the ASB meeting of April 6th to be approved.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.11, Chief Administrative Officer Report.
Good afternoon, Council. On page 125 of your agenda package is my monthly CAO report. So anything on page 125 is kind of just regular duties. Starting on page 127 is the council resolution tracker. So anything here, if there's any resolutions that are outstanding that council needs information or clarity on, again, as mentioned earlier, now would be a great time to ask. Anything in yellow is still ongoing. Anything deemed or noted as green is deemed complete by administration. If there are any questions, happy to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions for CAO Henderson? Deputy Reeve Clausen?
All right, thanks. I'm just looking to see which council motion it was, but for the Muirfield water rates, I'm getting a lot of people asking when that's going to come back for review.
So that is coming back on the 19th.
19th? Thank you very much.
I've confirmed that with staff,
Okay.
I think, yesterday.
Any other questions? A motion to accept for information?
I'll move. Sorry.
And are you moving the report and the council tracker, or do you want to do them separately?
If I can do both, I'll do both.
Is that okay? CAO Henderson, is it okay to do them combined, or would you rather two?
I think for consistency purposes, we have been doing them as two.
Keep them separate, okay.
We may as well.
So a motion to accept the report as information?
Yeah.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move that council accept the May 3rd, 2022 council resolution tracker as information.
Any questions or discussion on the tracker? All in favor? Motion is carried. Move to 4.12.
Yes, good afternoon, Council. Brian from administration again. So we received an email from Tricia Hampton advising us that Gary Crabson has given his notice of resignation to the Drumheller and Area Health Foundation Board as of June 22nd, 2022. So they have requested for a replacement. So these have typically always been members at large that represent the county. It was something that Councillor Armstrong did I think he did some recruitment through his own to get some people to come back to council to get approved by council resolution, of course. So now we're kind of just at that point where we just need to either appoint a member at large. I believe there's an option to appoint a councillor as well. We just haven't typically taken that route, but the information's in the package. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Council's wishes.
So for Wheatland County, how do we intersect with Drumheller Area Health Foundation, like to our population?
My general understanding is a close proximity. They would definitely service some Wheatland County residents. They would use their service. Okay. I believe at the end of 2021, it could have been the last council meeting just prior to the election, the county did make a monetary donation to the Drumheller and Health. Just want to make sure. Drumheller Area Health Foundation Board of $4,000, and it was to do with some equipment. There had been some requests that came forward in the past. So I think just ultimately we just work in conjunction with boards and committees, even if we're not legislatively required to appoint people, just for the benefit of Wheatland County residents and ratepayers.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Probably about Springville.
Councillor Larson and then Councillor Kester.
I was just going to say a good chunk of Division 7 and some of Division 6 would use Drumheller as the closest health facility.
That's what I was going to say.
Yep, and even outside of that, I personally have used it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I do know many ratepayers in the county that do access all services there.
Okay.
Council's wishes.
I'll move that council appoint Mary Marshman as the Wheatland County member at large, and further that council direct administration to advertise a member at large position for the Drumheller Area Health Foundation.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
And one more. I'd like to, I think it would be very nice if Wheatland County wrote a thank you letter to Gary Crabson for all his years as board. He was on there a lot of years. More than me, yeah.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, make that motion.
Any questions or discussion? It's a great idea. All in favor? Motion is carried. Move to 4.13, scheduling of committee of the whole.
Yes, council. So on page 139 of the agenda pack is just scheduling for a committee of the whole date. So the committee of the whole, it is a committee of council, and just to kind of discuss various items, policies, ongoing issues in the county. We would kind of prepare an agenda and bring it forward for discussion. At the committee of the whole, there is no resolutions made. That's kind of just the difference between a council meeting and the committee of the whole. And what we do is we would make those meetings available for the public to join. Not necessarily, kind of just an open meeting similar to this, just for the 2 new council that haven't sat through a committee of the whole. Great opportunity for councils to provide administration direction on things, just so we can further pursue work. So what we have included is just some dates. After I publish the dates, we kind of, if administration were to select a date ourselves, the best date for us would be that June 2nd date, just because it does provide far out notice that we could prepare some other documents that we believe that should come forward to council's attention, just for, some work that administration can kind of proceed on, that kind of stuff. And ultimately, these are just dates that administration presented as well. Obviously open to any dates that work for council.
Second is FCM.
Yeah, I'm not available on the 2nd. If we're looking for a little further out, what would June 14th after MPC look like? What does that look like for administration?
Oh, I think we can make that work.
What does that look like for council? We're all already here, and it's typically a relatively short meeting. June 14th?
Yep.
We could have a motion.
Doing any cannabis joints, so that would.
Is that a significant day for that?
It's for MPC. That's the only reason we ever go long.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah. Okay. I wasn't picking up on.
Didn't get it either.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I knew what I was thinking.
I know you did, and now I do too. There is a suggested motion on page 139. We could just insert June 14th. If we said 10 a.m.?
And we could also say approval that Wheeling County Committee of the Whole be scheduled to take place on June 14th to commence after the conclusion of the Municipal Planning Commission meeting. That would be a nice way to put it too.
Okay. I'll move approval that Wheeling County Committee of the Whole be scheduled to take place on June 14th to commence following the Municipal Planning Commission meeting.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.21, Corporate and Financial Services Report.
We do have a scheduled 1 p.m. in-camera session as well from legal counsel. So it might be wise to do that one first.
Perfect. Absolutely. Thank you. I'll move us into closed session. All in favor? Opposed?
Just the vote.
You two are opposed? Okay, motion is carried. Good afternoon. We'll call the meeting, we've moved out of closed session, and we will continue on with the agenda, starting at 4.21. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council. Tracy from Corporate and Financial Services. I'm here to provide an update of activities in April. The 2022 tax and assessment notices were mailed on April 21st. And again, we're reminding all property owners that if your address was changed and you have not received your notice by the middle of May, to please contact the county. Taxes are due June 30th. The assessment complaint is due June 28th. A selection of a vendor for the aerial photo project is completed, and we're expecting to have the imagery done by August 31st. A reminder, we've also sent out the residential request for information forms to Range 25, Speargrass, and Gleason, and the response deadline is May 27th for those. Financial statements have been posted to the Wheatland County website. and quarterly reports are currently being compiled for council, starting with Q1 for 2022. Under information security, a secure and easy to use password manager for staff is selected and being tested, and deployment has begun. As well, we are also doing information security training sessions. Those are planned for next month. And we have extended the existing Security Operations Center monitoring contracts for ongoing 24/7 security monitoring, actions, notifications. We're seeing an increase of frequency of attacks. So security is always our #1 priority. As well, we have a new information management policy. It's being drafted and will be reviewed and presented to council, along with the retention schedule bylaw. And this is in conjunction with the digital transformation project. Under asset management work, we continue to work under the bridge asset management plan. We've completed life cycle calculations, started working on draft levels of service, as well as helped with inventory calculation for water assets. We completed preliminary desktop investigation to determine the types of data the county currently has tracked for sanitary, water, storm assets. And we're reviewing asset management software with 2 vendors and looking at demos and receiving quotes for those services. Those are the highlights of my report to council. Any questions?
Any questions? If not, a motion to accept the report as information.
Also move.
Councillor Eckert has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.31, Community and Development Services Report.
Good afternoon, Council. Matt from Administration. On page 146 of your agenda package is the Community and Development Services April 2022 update. Some salient reports from each division, and I'll be quite brief. We did have a successful staff pitch-in event, which occurred last week. Unfortunately, we had to defer the main event due to weather. As many of you recall, we did have a major snap snowfall, so we had to defer that. We had 6 or 7 staff participate, and we cleaned up some public spaces and parks in the Carsland area, so we're very proud of that, and stay tuned for next year. Hopefully we can get it even larger. So we actually increased it by 100% participation, which I'm quite happy with. With respect to some next quarter plans for Parks and Recreation, we'll do the Clooney tree replacement, and that is slated for an agenda item in June to bring an update. So stay tuned for that. We're very excited about that. The work continues on the next level county gateway signage in July 2022. We're expecting a completion date. I will provide council an update. We are anticipating that the gateway signage along Highway 1 or the other, will be the first to be put up. So we'll ensure that we get a nice photo opportunity for that to occur. We're very excited for that. Nonetheless, we'll move on to Fire and Emergency Services. As Councillor Bigger had mentioned, we are planning that open house on the 14th of May, so stay tuned for that. If I have any additional announcements, I'll circulate council on that. You have actuals and statistics for incidents by station, location of incidents on page 147 and 148. With respect to planning and development, you do have permit actuals in your agenda package on 148 and 149. With respect to the municipal development plan, we are we have circulated the updates. Council did have a chance to provide updates or commentary for that. And we're excited to get that update to council for its review. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Any questions for Community Development Services? If not, a motion to accept for information.
So moved.
Councillor Kester has moved. All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.32, Lakewood Homes request.
On page 154 of your agenda package, Council, and Matt Buscariel again with CDS, is the Lakewood Homes request for letter from a community partner. Lakewood Homes, Strathmore's Director of Sales and Marketing, Scott Silva, actually reached out to the Reeve and administration with respect to providing kind of a brief regional economic development profile, a succinct brief page to include in their package, which of course investors receive when they look to purchase a property. This community is just adjacent to Wheatland County. It's kind of standard practice to provide that economic profile, and we're just looking for council support to draft this briefing.
Council's wishes.
I'll move that council authorize administration to draft a letter highlighting Wheatland County's economic development profile to be included in the Lakewood Homes Community Regional Package.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.33, Wheatland Regional Emergency Partnership Agreement. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council. Excuse my voice, I'm starting to lose it. I'm here just to present the Wheatland Regional Emergency Partnership Agreement. Back in 2019, the county passed the Wheatland Regional Emergency Management Plan, which we secured TSI to do a full oversight of our current plans, and according to the LEMUR, which is the Local Authority Emergency Management Regulation, there were some gaps that were recognized at that time. So what we did is TSI did a full review. There was considerable time and effort put into it. In 2019, we had all of the partners sign on except for the town of Strathmore. So the partners include the villages, Wheatland County, and the town of Strathmore. At that time, there was a little bit of delay from the town of Strathmore and Wheatland County due to a position. So there was a coordinator position that was recommended, and the parties weren't able to come to agreement on how that would be split. Since that time, we have come up with a solution. So the solution is it'll be a 0.25 position through Wheatland County, as well as a 0.25 position from the town of Strathmore, and between the two of them becomes a 0.5 position, which will be able to accomplish all of the work that's going to be required for the ramp. So that was really the biggest roadblock back in 2019. All parties have met, all parties have passed it through their respective councils, and Wheatland County is the last one to pass it. Just on a side note, we're actually meeting today. The group is in the ECC, and we've gotten together, and it's really a fantastic partnership. We're working together, preparing for emergencies that could come up through the summer, working on different exercises. So we're really happy with the progress that's been made since 2019, and I can confidently say that every party is working well together, and 100% in on this on the ramp. So really good progress. Really happy about it. Everything is within our budget, so it's a $20,000 budget that we've set aside between the groups. That'll be split between the town of Strathmore and Wheatland County, and like I said, we've got that within our budget. Any changes to the budget will be discussed annually, and we'll obviously come to council if there's a need for more. So that'll cover our administration as well as any exercises. Again, very exciting for the county, very exciting for the town, all the partners. In the event of a large emergency in the town of Strathmore, it affects Wheatland County. Same with the villages, and in today's world, a lot of these emergencies, as they get larger, you need a lot of resources. So sharing those resources, I think, is important. And I'm happy that we're working close together to make sure that our residents are safe.
Any questions regarding the agreement?
So you sound confident that the 0.25s working together, that's workable?
It's absolutely workable. So they're meeting on a consistent basis, and they're bringing back the information. And again, we've got a committee meeting right now that we're meeting, and they're bringing that forward. So that's where we make the changes in progress.
That's awesome. Nice to hear.
Any other questions? I just do have a couple questions, and I feel bad because the other municipalities have signed. On page 167 of our package, page 8 of the agreement, we have 5 RCMP detachments that serve Wheatland County, but we don't have bicycle referenced under RCMP for agencies invited to attend.
Okay.
I don't know if we should include bicycle. I know it's just a small part of the county, but we should probably have all of them. As well, I believe in previous documents we had seen, on this one I see under Roman numeral 8, AHS for EMS, and I believe our EMS is a contract AHS. I wasn't sure, but I don't think they are AHS EMS, but I don't know if that needs to be differentiated. It might even just be easiest just to say EMS, and then it's very like,
okay.
It doesn't matter who the you know what I mean? Like then it doesn't need to be amended if there's any changes or that type of thing. As well, it's the former name for the chamber was Strathmore District, so if we could update that to Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce, just so it's up to date. I did want to commend Echo Councillor LaPrice's. I think it's excellent, the model that we have found utilizing existing staff. That's very commendable, and I think a really good model to show that both municipalities can provide some staff and that can work. The benefits to each of the municipalities in the region, I think, are immense with a model like this, and I'm really grateful that we're able to action this. One other question I had, I believe we had referenced Siksika Nation when we had looked at this previously, but then I also know that you bring in other sort of municipal partners and that type of thing, but forgive me, I did not go back. I didn't find my old file, but I seem to recall Siksika being on the list previously. Just something for consideration.
Okay.
I think I do see it there.
Oh, did I miss it?
Yeah, under point number 11, I guess. It's neighboring municipalities, and at the end it's Siksika First Nation.
Oh, excellent. Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, yes, and communities. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry I missed that.
I think process-wise, I should be able to make those changes as friendly amendments.
Okay.
Bring them back, and so we will have the original.
They're mainly
copy.
more like textual or edits or.
Madam Reeve, we'll make the textual amendments, and we'll just circulate it to the partners that those textual amendments were made.
And I have one other question. Forgive me, I also meant to look this up, and I just simply ran out of time. On page 175, under annual budget process, section 7. It says Wheatland County and the town of Strathmore will be requisitioned. I know the province is kind of touchy around the word requisition. Through legislation, does the agency have requisitioning authority, or should we use like an alternative word like request funds, or, and maybe it doesn't matter. I know requisition, we need to be somewhat cautious with that word.
Yeah, I would agree with you, kind of just taking a look at this, just because requisition under the MGA definitely has a different definition than probably what would be in here.
Yeah, I don't.
We could easily change that to funded. Again, I don't think it's a major difference, but it would be good to correct it and just have the correct wording. And
yeah.
I think all parties would agree with that as
And
well.
maybe authority to requisition. I meant to look, I just didn't check if through legislation there is a requisitioning authority. There may be, but if there's not, we should probably just steer away from that word. That was all I had. And I do want to commend our administration and the administration from the 5 municipalities. This really does strengthen our emergency management capacity and is excellent for the region. And I'm really grateful that we are working together on this. And we're all stronger when we have something like this in place. So we hopefully will never have to use it, but reality is at some point we will. So.
Just a final note, Madam Reeve, to Council, and you had highlighted Bicyker. We do actually, and their staff sergeant reached out several months ago. I know they have a small chunk in our county, but it's still really good to have those relationships, and our peace officers, through our senior peace officer, he's working with their staff sergeant, and we're in constant communication. So just a note, I know they have a small section, but we are still working.
It's just always that chance too, that if there is an incident in their portion of the county, just that we do have those relationships established. And so much of this, like the relationships that are built and the ability to work together and communicate, sets that foundation for potential future events. So does anybody else have any other questions or comments? So there is a suggested recommendation from administration on page 157.
I'll make the motion that council authorize the Reeve to sign the regional Wheatland Regional Emergency Partnership Agreement as presented.
Perhaps just as amended.
Oh, as
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.
We'll move to 4.41, Transportation and Agriculture Report.
Good morning, Council. Brad Bullock reporting from administration. For the report, just not written in the report, just wanted to make a mention to Council that CAO Henderson and I did meet with representatives of the Cooperative Stormwater Management Initiative, CSMI, just to explore potential options in regards to the west side servicing there. And we are, at this point, just waiting for some correspondence back from them and some information. On page 183 of the report under capital projects, just go through some of the highlighted parts of this. So the road reconstruction on Range Road 205 between Township 250 and Highway 564 has started. The work on bridge files, so just the remaining site reclamation work for these projects that were done, bridge file shown in the report there, are being finished currently with the seeding and fencing to follow in May. Also in Rosebud, Fortis is doing a review of the lighting in Rosebud. This is something that came up, I believe, with some community discussions in the past couple of years. And so they're just looking at those in terms of lighting standards. Just to be clear, this is just an information gathering exercise right now. Anything with that would be taken back to the community for discussion before going ahead with any measures there. The fire hall painting in the Gleason and the Wheatland West Fire Hall has started. I believe this is actually completed now on both of those buildings. On to the next page, page 184, under operations, just general snow fencing removal has been completed. Seasonal staff have started back at the county for the 2022 summer season. The shoulder intersection sweeping with pothole patching is scheduled to be started this month. I believe that's already begun. And as you can see, there's a photo there on page 184 of the two radar speed signs that were installed on Highway 840 entering Rosebud to help helping to control the speeds on that road. On page 185 under utilities, so the decommissioning plan for the Rosebud septic field has been approved by AAP, and the work will be done on that this summer. A new natural gas contract was signed with Direct Energy for 2023 to 2027. In the hamlets, there was some hydrovac work happening in the hamlets in Rosebud and Speargrass, so one for some sign installation and also for some cleaning out of some of the catch basins in Speargrass. Also, street cleaning in the hamlets began last month, and that's completed now. Under the land, so page 186, again, the table just summarizing the lot sales for the lots in Murfield. So all of those lots, I believe this was made mention of last month as well, those are sold with all conditions removed. And then I believe it's sometime near the end of June that's scheduled for, right now, assuming all of those sales close, that would be wrapped up by the end of June. But at least for the time being, there are all the conditions have been moved on any pending sales. On page 187, agriculture and environment. Again, seasonal employees have started back with the county. The Agricultural Service Board meeting was held April 6th, which council approved the minutes for today. Also, as per a resolution made during that meeting, Wheatland County did facilitate a meeting between the ASB, the Woodland and Area Surface Rights Society, the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, so CAP, and also EPAC on April 25th to discuss the matters related to surface leases under the Alberta Surface Rights Act. So that meeting did occur. Also, lastly, May 4th, so tomorrow, there's a planned presentation of the Youth Environmental Stewardship Award to the Cartland School for the Ika Nutsi program that they're putting on. And the remaining activities, capital projects and operational activities, are included in the tables attached to the report, and that's my report, and I'm here for any questions.
Any questions?
I got a couple comments. That light you installed at Rosebud, the residents really appreciate that speed thing. And just so you know, the fastest speed you can go is 5 clicks. I won't tell you how they determined that. And there's a story there. So thanks again for that. So when you're doing the lighting review in Rosebud, when there's no dinner theater between the four-way stop going straight south, that gets really dark down there where the post boxes is, and they're worried about, type of clientele that drive around the county. The landowner around by the new Rosebud boom there said it's really rough. They seeded it, and don't go in and fix it now, but maybe come fall we can get a grader or something. I think maybe it's rough because it's new digging and it's lumpy and it's been dry and all that whole story there. They're not concerned about it, but come fall, if we can straighten it out, or they would appreciate that. And the last one's just, I'm going to word it so nobody gets blamed for it. I was in a store and I was hit up by a ratepayer. They were very concerned about the way I eventually said, I'll take it to council, and then it was good. They're eventually concerned about the 3 passes grading, being the 3rd pass that the blade is straight across the road. And I think it, when you drive down the road, it is not smooth like it used to be. It's kind of like baby washboards in it, and he's feared that it's a starting point for more washboards. So if you could do 2 passes, he'd be way happier. If you do the 3rd pass, make sure that if you could do an angle. And I think when you're trying to hook up with somebody out in the country to speak about some of the road issues too, could do that, that would make my visits to the store a little bit different. Okay, thanks for that. I don't want to name any road grader or any area or anything like that.
That sounds good. Thank you. Through the read, thank you for those comments. We are aware of that particular thing, and we do have plans to go out and look at those with our crews. So yeah, thank you for the comments. We appreciate it.
I don't know if it's because of what the roads are made out of. It's sandier there, or what the conditions are. I'm not an expert, so we'll let you and your crew come to some sort of a truth.
Any other questions for Transportation and Agriculture? Councillor Berger.
I'm wondering, I'm getting a few questions. Is Highway 24-817 going to start this spring? Do you know if that's still on the books?
Yeah, so through the read, Cody, our operations manager, is out for tender right now, but we don't currently have a start date yet. But we can certainly let council know once we have that information.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, a motion to accept the report as information. Councillor Kester.
Moved.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 5.1, correspondence. We had a letter from Minister of Transportation, and Alberta Recreation and Parks, Communities in Bloom. Council's wishes.
I move that council accepts the following items as information as provided in the request for decision. Is there a request for decision? No. Okay. Minister of Transportation correspondence dated March 31st, 2022 regarding RMA follow-up, and the Alberta Recreation and Parks Association correspondence dated April 21, 2022, re-2022, Communities in Bloom.
Any questions or discussion? Just a question to administration if we're doing anything with Communities in Bloom. I know we had a previous motion for, I'm going to guess Dave knows all about this. Thank you, Dave.
Yes, last year council set aside some funds for communities to participate if they so chose to. Speargrass did take up that last year and did participate. I haven't heard whether or not they're interested in this year, but they do have an AGM on May 18th, I believe. So it's coming up. So last year, the county covered the registration fees for that, and it was $211 last year for that. So
If we proceed with that, I'd ask that you talk to the Muirfield group, because they got a bunch of people that plant stuff and they might like to participate.
We do have a motion on the floor for the correspondence. We could contemplate a similar motion to last year to support any communities that want to participate again. I think it's good to pay the membership, and then it's very much citizen driven. It really does go a long way to beautify the communities that are in it. I think there's a good framework that the organization has built for the communities to draw on. So I would certainly support it being open to any communities that want to participate. We can address that after, I guess. Any other questions or discussion on the motion to accept for information? All in favor? Motion is carried. Do we want a motion?
I'll move that Wheatland County support the administration fees or membership fees for Communities in Blue for any community that wants to join for 2022.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We just have a couple of outstanding closed session items. I will move us into closed session. All in favor? Motion is carried. Moved out of closed session. There are potentially motions arising from the closed session. Council's wishes.
I'll make the motion that council deny the request by Lynx Energy to reverse penalties.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move that council accepts the general comments provided by Brownlee LLP dated April 19th, 2022 regarding setback requirements for structures located within the High Eagle campground as information.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move that council direct staff to proceed with development permit process as recommended by county legal and administration.
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move that council direct the Reeve to send a response letter to Honorable Minister Rick Iver in response to the April 19, 2022 letter from the villages of Rockyford and Standard as presented.
Any questions or discussion? All in
Recorded vote.
Recorded vote. Reeve Link is in favor. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
In favor.
Councillor Laprise.
In favor.
Councillor Bigger.
In favor.
Councillor Eichert.
In favor.
Councillor Kester.
Opposed.
Councillor Larson.
Opposed.
Motion is carried.
I'll make the motion that council directed administration to work in conjunction with legal counsel to provide council a draft demand letter for consideration to be sent out to the villages of Rocky Ford and Standard to be ratified at the May 17th council meeting prior to sending.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. I believe that's it. That concludes our agenda. I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.